Shalom, welcome back. Now we're going to be talking about whole verbs. Alright, well, I've been working on this project for quite a while, and it's been taking me some time to put it together, but I have the whole verb area finished. So once I get it uploaded, you'll be able to pull up the charts. This is the whole verb charts. Put it in the section if you have the ability of making laminated booklets. Just print off the sheets, take the books, and then you can laminate it next to your whole verb chart section right here. Okay, you can put it right in front of this, so on this page here you'll have right in front of the page all your whole verbs. Okay, so this is basically going to remind you that only these specific roots belong to the whole verb category, and this is going to help you with your vocalizing the actual roots into the actual forms we're using right here, the future tense. We'll be doing the past tense after this, but we're going to do the future tense first. And we're just going to go through this and memorize how to use this chart properly and how to put the roots over here into the actual spaces over here so that we're actually utilizing these words. Alright? So, without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so you got your verb chart, okay? You got your list of verbs that you know only these are called whole verbs. Now, why are they called whole verbs? Let's understand something important here. Why are they called whole verbs is because of the fact, number one, they're verbs that don't have a yod in the front. They're verbs that don't have a nun in the front because these are called weak verbs. These are verbs by which these letters drop off and disappear when put in different forms. They don't have an ending hey. They don't carry a middle guttural by which that requires a certain form of vowelization. And I'll show you in the chart here that if you look, for example, here, this is going to be the plural form for you. Okay, you notice that this has a schwa here. That could not be used for the middle guttural. You'd have to actually put a vowel sound underneath it, and so therefore it requires its own special chart. That's why the middle guttural chart is used. Okay, and the yud and the nuns, why this is important? Well, in the front, these actual root letters will drop off, and so all you have is the actual pronoun and two root letters that exist with the actual root. We also have the ending guttural, by which here we'd have a problem with the ending gutturals in these parts, which it would need also a vowel sound. And so therefore the ending guttural has its own chart. And we're going to use each of these charts one step at a time, utilizing each of these charts individually as we go through, so we can really practice to get really good and strong with learning how to put together our whole verbs. Okay? And why I made these charts online without the actual letters was so that these spaces represented where the letter goes. Well, this makes it so easy for you if you understand how to use the chart. And it also makes it easy because you can print off each individual chart. You could literally take every single word that you have in your Hebrew categorization of the roots, and you can place them in this. And if you wanted to go so crazy as to make over 3,000-4,000 words with all the roots in them, past, present, and future, you could do it. Okay? And that's what this was meant for. It was meant to help you grow and build your vocabulary of Biblical Hebrew, as well as you also learn to memorize its form. This is so important. When I'm reading in Biblical Hebrew, and I know that this root requires this form, I know exactly how to grammatically write these things out. That's the point of it. The point is to be able to take these words and grammatically write these things out so that you can do it correctly, and you also can do it with the proper vowelization that you need with regard to these roots. Okay? So, if we don't have a yud or nun, this possibly could be a whole verb. If we don't have an ending hey, it possibly could be a whole verb. If we don't have a middle ein, or a middle guttural, or an ending guttural, And then lastly, if we don't have the middle letters vav, yud, or vav, one looks as an O, one looks as an U sound, and the yud, then we have a whole verb. This means that this root word is going to stay intact. Now, there's only a few exceptions to the rule, and that's going to be our special roots, okay? And we're going to work on special roots on their own complete form, because these roots we have to look at and realize they're just unique, they're just different, they're ones that just stand out opposed to all the other root letters that we have, and that they have their own unique little helping, okay? It's just like, for example, when we got nouns, all right? We have Hebrew nouns by which there are certain nouns that are feminine and masculine. Well, I don't have a ton of them in Hebrew, but what I do have is enough to know that I have to separate them into their own category. And that's the same thing we're going to do here. We're going to separate these special verb forms into their own category as special, and we're going to require their own verb chart, their own vowelization by which they have to have. So here, we're using the most simplest and the most easiest and the most common form by which we're going to understand this as the paal form, also known as the kal form. Okay? I like the term paal because it always makes you think of ah. Whenever you put it in the third person masculine form, you're always going to hear the ah present sound. And this is a revolutionary thing that I got to learn when I was living in Israel, and when I was sitting here listening to someone teach about the paal, and it made it click even better when I was learning Hebrew at the time. And now it just makes it so easy to know the fact that when you think of paal, you always think of the sound. And so what we're talking about, if I was to take, and I'll put down here the root like katav, kaf, tav, bet. If I put the kamatz and the patach, I have my sound. So katav, okay? All of the whole verbs in the paal forms, okay, are all going to use the form. Now the whole verbs, the reason why they're different and unique is because these ones always will have the sound. Not all paal verbs do, such as the yud and the vowel verbs. These are the verbs by which they have the middle yud and the middle vowel by which they're not going to have the sound. Okay? So here we're going to take these roots and we're going to start putting them in the chart. Let's start learning our chart here first. First we have the I. The I is the aleph. Think of I when you think of ani. Okay? If you see the aleph in the front of the verb, think of ani, which is the word for I in Hebrew. Okay? So here we have the three root letters that are going to be placed in a position here. If I was to take, for example, bakash. Bakash means to seek something out. I will take my roots, bet, kof, and shin, and what do I have? I have avkosh. Avkosh. I will seek. It's that simple. We're taking the root letters, we're putting it inside the vowel points that are already existing in the chart, and we're just now able to pronounce the word in the future tense. Avkosh. I will seek. The next one we have is you, which is the masculine form. And we see T. T is like we have to think of ata, you. So T makes me know this is the masculine second person form, you. Now we have, once again, the black spaces by which we're going to fill them in. We take our root, bet, kof, shin, and we place it in. Bet, kof, shin, and now I have tiv kosh. You will seek. Same thing. Now we're going to take the root over here and we're going to go do it for the second person feminine. Now notice, the second person feminine, if we look closely at it, we see a tav in the beginning and the yud at the end. The yud at the end is the indicator. This is the feminine second person form, okay? Because the only endings we're ever going to see is either going to be the plural or the masculine form or the feminine form for the second person, which is u and na, or we're going to see the plural third person for the masculine and third person for the feminine, which is u and na, okay? So when we see e at the end, we know this is the second person plural feminine, okay? So now if I take it, I'm going to put here bet, kaf, shin. And what do I have? Tiv, kashi. Tiv kashi. Tiv kashi means what? You, feminine, will seek. Okay? Once again, bet, kof, shin. We're going to put it over here, and now we're going to put it in the third person singular form. Okay? And you see the yud here. The yud here is the indicator that this is the masculine form. Okay? And we're going to have to think about this as whenever I see yud, that I think of the masculine form in the front. We put the bet here. We put the kof and the shin. Now what do we have? Yiv kosh. Yiv kosh. He will seek. Now we have the feminine form here. Notice the feminine is all identical as to with the masculine, but it's not the same form. This is the second person, while this is the third person feminine. So we have to ask ourselves contextually when we're reading, okay? Remember, it's going to be easy if you're speaking this because you already know by what tense you're speaking of, and it'll be easy for the person hearing it to know what tense you're using. The reading is where we go into interpreting where is it that he's being said here. Do I know this is a feminine character? Or know this is a masculine character? That's how we're identifying this. So when I see here the tav, only in the context am I going to say, oh, this doesn't make sense for it to be you. It has to be she. And so therefore we do once again, we put the bet here, we put the kof here, we put the shin, and what do we have? Tif kosh. You becomes she, all right? So it looks like the you, but here it's the feminine form. So it's she, tiv kosh, she will seek. All right? Now we're going to go to the plural forms. The plural forms is, we're going to see here, begins with a nun. We have to think of the nun as something that's connected to like the word anachnu, we. Anachnu, nu. You hear that nu sound? That's we, anachnu, we. Okay? So here, the nun represents the pronoun we. Of course, now once again, what do we have? We have our three open spaces. And when we put the bet here, and the kof, and the shin, what do we have? Niv kosh. Niv kosh. We will seek. Alright? Now we're going to do the second person plural masculine form, which is used for both males and females collectively together. And as you can see, I repeat this a lot because it's important just to remember that masculine forms always bring both males and females together in that form. Okay? So here we have the tav and we have the u. Okay? So when you see the tav, you have to think of atem, you, and the pronoun, you masculine plural. The u is also the indicator that this is plural. Okay? Because if you think of it over here in the masculine sense, is tiv kosh, right? You see the T, right? Here you see the T, but you see the U at the end. So when you see the U, always remember plural. This is a plural form of the second person. So here, once again, we're going to put our root in. And now we have what? Tiv kshu. Tiv kshu, right? Which means you, plural, will seek, all right? Then we're going to do the feminine plural. Here in the feminine, we see T and we see na. Na, always think, whenever you see na at the end of that verb, it's always referring to the plural form. Always, okay? And we think of ti, we think of this, as in tivkshi. We know that tivkshi, the yud indicated here with the tav, that this was the singular form. Well, here, the na with the ti is indicating the plural form. So we're talking the second person plural feminine form. So here, when we add the root bet, kof, shin, what do we have? Tivkosh na. Tivkosh na, which means you, plural, will seek. Now we go back over here to the masculine plural form. Notice the masculine is identical to the masculine singular. The only difference is we have the u. Okay? So when I see the u, once again, I know this is plural. Why? Because I remember here, the u form is identical to the u form in the singular form. The only differentiation is the u. So when I see the u at the end, I know this is plural. Okay? If I see the yud, I know this is the third person. If I see the tav, I know this is the second person. Okay? You got to get that memorization in your head, because when we're reading, this is how we're going to quickly identify the verbs that we're utilizing. Okay? And it's so important that we understand the whole verbs first. Okay? Because when we take the whole verbs and we start utilizing them, we'll realize the fact that they're all going to be the same. Same things are going to happen over and over again. Whole verbs have the same vowelization. The only differentiation is the consonants. The consonants are not going to be the same, because based on the consonants that you have you're going to be using is going to be based upon, well, what verb you're using. Okay? Because remember, when we have our chart here, we have all these different possibilities, and I have basically 13 pages. There are 13 pages that have to do with just the whole verbs chart. So you have a lot of possibilities by which you would be utilizing verb-wise, and you can build your vocabulary from this. Okay? And I want you to take advantage of it. I mean, this is a great opportunity. I don't know of anybody out there that has these kind of things available for you guys out there to just have. I myself, when I saw how much it was so difficult for me in my beginning stages of learning Hebrew because of the lack of material, the lack of stuff that was out there, and everybody wanted to sit there and they wanted to demand that you give them some kind of money that you worked hard for so that you can get what they, did what? They went to college and learned. So what? They don't want to give you that information. You got to always work for every single thing that's out there. You're doing the work yourself when you're learning Hebrew. And I feel like that's the most important thing you have to understand. Nobody can give you a Hebrew education. You're learning that Hebrew by going through and taking the work and effortlessly working like crazy to understand what this means and how it works and what Hebrew does. Okay? It's just like language and stuff. You naturally learn language when you walk on the streets. You naturally learn language when you go into the store, when you talk to people. People correct you in your speech. People tell you that's not what that word means and stuff. And do they charge you for it? They say, hey man, that's going to cost you $50 for that lesson I just gave you. No. Yeah. And this is how I believe Hebrew should be taught. I believe Hebrew should be something that everybody out there who wants to know it should have the ability to know and understand these things for free. And I believe that, if you care as much as I do about Hebrew, you're going to take this information and pass it on to others too. Because you want others to learn Hebrew, and you want others to get this stuff so that they can gain their knowledge and knowing and growing in the Torah, so they can learn the scriptures for themselves and understand exactly what it is the Bible's saying. Okay? Because this is vitally important. You need to be able to have the Bible written in Hebrew, and you need to be able to have the ability to read it and go through it and understand these things. Well, this is what you have to do. You have to take these things and put them in their proper forms to understand them and to see why they have to be written this way and what it is about them. Okay? So now, the third person we have here, okay? So the third person we see is identical to the third person over here. The only difference is the u, all right? So when I put my root, we see yik shu. They will seek. Yik shu, right? Now we have once again here, we have a funny instance. We see here the you plural for the feminine is identical to the they plural feminine, okay? And so once again, context is going to be the game that you're going to be playing here. You're going to be asking yourself, well, just like this one, is it she or is it you? So is it they or is it you? That's what you're doing. You're doing the same exact thing. And the only difference is this is the feminine form where this was the masculine form. Okay? So here we go and we take the bet, kof, and the shin. And what do we have here? We have tiv kosh na. Tiv kosh na. And that would make it that they, feminine, plural, will seek. Alright? You can use any of, like I said, the words that are in the whole verb chart, and you can put it in these vowelizations, and you're going to find that when you do these things, you'll have a whole slew of verb usages. The only differentiation difficulty you have to learn about Hebrew with the differences to English is English uses one verb form. If you want to speak in the future, you're going to speak in that one verb form. Doesn't matter if it's plural, if it's masculine, if it's singular. Doesn't matter if it's going to be dealing with second person, third person, first person. Doesn't matter. In English, you're going to find this is where your only struggle is going to be. Okay, is you're going to have to start saying that one word that you learned in English is now going to have to become literally 9 new words that you have to learn in Hebrew. Okay, because your mind's going to think of each of these forms as a new word. And that's the only difficulty part of learning Hebrew is the fact that in the Hebrew, when you deal with the verbs, you have to ask yourselves, what form are you using? Are you using the first person? Are you using the second person? Or the third person? If you're using the first person, you have 2 choices. You have the I singular or the we plural. If you're using the second person, you have 4 choices. It's either you masculine, you feminine, or you masculine, you feminine in the plural. Okay? So these are the things you're going to have to understand. You're going to be literally looking at these as individual words. Because your mind, when you're learning grammar and you're learning vocabulary, is not going to look at the word bakash as a word. You understand that? And that's one of the things you have to fight against and learn to take out of your head. Because bakash is the root. Okay? So for you, you should remember what the word bakash is as the root. What's the meaning? It means to what? To seek out. Okay? That's what it means. And that's used in the infinitive form. If I was to say to go to, I know to go is the infinitive form in English. So I have to memorize the fact that all of these roots are in the infinitive form. So you have to remember, you have to sit yourself and say, listen, bet, kof, shin is the root which means to seek out. I have to remind myself to seek out as an infinitive verb. Because in English, you just don't think that way. You don't stop and say, I'm speaking infinitive to you. Do you understand that? Nobody does that. Okay? What we do is we naturally just speak in the proper sense by which we know we are to respond in, and we utilize it. So when we're changing over from English into Hebrew, we're going to have to start creating a different dynamic way of learning and thinking. And that dynamic way of thinking is going to sit there and require me to sit there and say, okay, I have a root that means to seek. So when I write it down on my card, my 3x5 card, I'm going to have to write on one side, bet, kof, shin, to seek. When I flip the card over, I'm going to ask myself the question, how do you say I will seek in the future? And how do you say we will seek in the future? And you will have to remind yourself that the way to say I will seek is what? Ev kosh. How do you say you will seek? nivkosh. You're going to have to learn to think in Hebrew differently than you did in English. In English, you're going to have to learn to say, you will seek as one word. That's how you're going to have to think in Hebrew. Because in English, you're looking at you, will, and seek as three separate words. In Hebrew, you're going to have to start saying they're not separate words anymore. They're one fluid word. And all of these things are combined together to create that very element by which I'm to understand. Now I want to teach you something about future. We're going to learn a little bit something about mood. What is mood? Mood is the expression of possibility. For example, if I said, I could have studied, but I didn't. I could. Could is a mood form verb that we have in English. In Hebrew, there is no such thing. Mood is defined by context. So if I wanted to say, I could seek out, all I would say is evkosh. Do you see how complex Hebrew can become? You have the word bakash, which means to seek, as a root, okay? And you have the first person, which you could say, evkosh, I will seek. But if I want to make it as if I'm making a statement of possibility, you could literally say, evkosh. I could seek out et hadavar hazeh, this thing. And see, contextually would be understood. And this is where, in spoken form, the context lies upon the hearing. You're going to know by the hearing what the context is the person is saying. In written form, it's not simple. Matter of fact, there's a lot of interpretation that goes into the written form. Because when we put stuff in the written form, we don't know, is he asking a question in which, or not asking a question, is he stipulating something, because asking a question, we do have a form for that. Is he stipulating something by which he's speaking that he could do or would do? Right? Because if I said, of course, I will, that's just referring to something that I'm going to do, right? Because that's the context of what future is. It's about action that is about to take place in the future, but is not taking place at this very moment. So we have to understand that in the verb, future form, the mood of possibility is very much a part of that actual meaning. And we don't have verbs of mood. We don't have any of that stuff. These are all based upon the context that's infused inside that one phrase that you're speaking, evkosh. And so if I said, I should, evkosh, I should go. I should seek. If I wanted to say, I should go to do it. I will go, I should go to do this. Right? So you have to understand the fact that the mood of possibility can exist within this very statement here. It all depends on context, and all depends upon what is it that the person is trying to speak. What is he trying to convey? What information is he saying? So when we're looking at a written text, there's a lot of questions that come into play. What is the person saying, and what is the person trying to go about doing? This helps out massively, because when we see that there's all of these massive possibilities, we begin to think, okay, there's a lot more I have to open my mind to in understanding Hebrew. Because it's not about just looking at a word and something says future and you think, oh, it's future, okay. It's more than that, okay. Matter of fact, to even say that the future tense of Hebrew is really future is not even quite perfect in itself. Because we can actually regard this form as the incompleted action. whereas the past tense would be regarded as the completed action, the completed state of an action. This is the incomplete state, whereas the complete state is the state that says it's already happened. Okay? You follow me? All right. So, if we were to take this whole verb form, okay, and now I want to stipulate the possibility of putting it into a Vav conversive. Now, what was the Vav conversive? If you watched my videos and listened to me as I talked about the Vav conversive form, the Vav conversive we can talk about as being basically the Vav narrative. Okay? What does that mean? It means it's the form by which we use in order to narrate information. It's like when you read a book, and she said this, and he said that, and they did this, and they did that, and they went where, and I said this, and I said that. That's the narrative form that we see. Okay? If we want to look at this and put any of this into the Vav conversive form, all we have to do is remember one major rule. If we were to place a Vav in front of any of these roots, these forms I should say, and we put a patach underneath it, we immediately have a Vav conversive. And therefore, you can make any of these whole verbs, which are in the future tense form, you can make any of these forms immediately become a past tense statement by just putting a Vav with a patach right underneath it. So if I was to take here, for example, the Vav here and put the patach, I know that if I've learned anything with regard to the issues of vowelizations and stuff, that there are things that take place with regard to vowel sounds. Okay? That if this was, for example, a segol with a shua, that this would have to be a segol over here. Okay? If I'm looking at this Vav, Vakesh, Vevakosh, I will seek to, and I sought. It's now past tense. Okay? If I want to make this just a simple Vav conjunction, remember, a complex Vav conjunction is where we're making it the Vav conversive, makes it the future tense is now looked at as the past. If I want to make a simple Vav conjunction, I just put a shua underneath it. Now we have ve'ev kosh, and I will seek. You understand? So when we put this Vav in front, this verb form now becomes just a regular future with and placed in front of it. Okay? However, as we learn in the past tense, as we will